Saturdays. Good evening, men's sex coach Cam Fraser.
Hey man, good to be back.
Let's talk about the humble vasectomy. Of course, the surgical procedure where a male has his testicles drained and urethra stapled shut. No, I'm just joking. That's not the real definition. Vasectomies, hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I think it's part of this whole idea of like men taking a bit more responsibility for contraception as well. But a vasectomy, I think maybe back in the medieval days, it would have been a little bit more intense with regards to staples and sutures. But modern day vasectomy is just essentially a little microsurgery of slicing through what's called the vas deferens. And that's essentially just the tube that carries sperm from your testicles into the canal, the urethral canal, where you essentially will ejaculate it out. So you still ejaculate, you still have seminal fluid, but there's just no sperm in that particular fluid because they can't get through this little sliced canal.
Here's a question that I have, clearly as an unvasectomized man, that everyone with a vasectomy will already know the answer to. Could you, from eyeball length, just be able to tell the difference between the deposit of a vasectomized man versus an unvasectomized man?
No, because the sperms are so small, they don't really contribute much to volume in terms of a size of an ejaculate. And now that there's, if you're looking at the package, the guy's junk, there's no scars anyway. So you can't really tell the difference between a person who's got a vasectomy and a person who doesn't.
This has got to be one of the greatest medical breakthroughs I've ever heard. It seems like such a crazy procedure for just someone taking half a day off work with a couple of frozen peas in the aftermath and placing a couple of bets on the hounds on Wednesday night. So I floated the idea of a vasectomy before, only because I don't think I want kids, but I'm not naive enough to think maybe I will in the future. So I thought maybe if I were to get my sperm frozen on the odd chance that they couldn't reverse the vasectomy, maybe I could cover all bases. What are we talking cost-wise for me to have a snippety-doo-dah day?
Well, according to the Australian Medical Association, the recommended fee is about $650. So I guess depending on the type of clinic that you go to, it might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less. You'll get some covered by private health and some health insurance as well, but $650 is your average price.
I've always thought I've got a really, really long, like an above average vas deferens. That's not going to affect the cost at all.
No, because you're slicing it in the same place either way. And there's a couple of different ways you can do it as well. There's like a closed-ended, which is a bit more old school way where they slice it and then they kind of sew up both ends of the vas deferens. That oftentimes can cause a little bit of congestion because obviously there's still sperm being produced, but it doesn't have anywhere to go. It gets kind of stuck. Then there's an open-ended, which is a bit more of a modern approach to it, which they slice it, but they sew one end shut, they leave the other end open. The sperm, they get produced, they come out, but then they just get reabsorbed back into the testicles because that's what sperm do when they're not ejaculated. And they're able to do it without a scalpel as well now. So you just use like this. I'm pretty sure they use it's kind of like microdermal kind of laser type thing, and they just in and out, you're good to go.
Oh, fascinating stuff. Fascinating. It's like the testicles are now just part of an operation board game. And what about reversing the process afterwards? Because I hear that 2% of the time it's unsuccessful.
Right. So you can reverse it. Now these modern day vasectomies are reversible. So it's going to cost you about $7,000 to get the microsurgery to reconnect the vas deferens. And the reversal has a 90% success rate. So even though you get it, it might not necessarily bring back your fertility.
It's just classic doctors, isn't it? Luring you in with a cheap $700 stitchy, and then all of a sudden you change your mind a couple of years later, pay for the nose, 1,000%. 10 times over. Shocking.
That's it. That's why you got to freeze some sperm before you go in. That's one of the strategies.
Well, then how much would that cost? Because now the numbers are starting to add up, and I'm going to have to add a third column into my Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. What are we talking now?
All right. Well, if you're freezing sperm before a vasectomy, you're looking at about $600 to freeze the sperm, and then you're looking for about $400 plus per year in order to store the sperm.
Maintenance fees. Okay, that's all right. I can deal with that. Big Dog likes these numbers. But then, of course, that's where they get you, the IVF on the way back out. Big money. Big money.
Yeah, very much so, man. And something you've also got to consider as well with a vasectomy is some men do start to produce what's called sperm antibodies, which are these things that essentially they're proteins made by the body to kind of support the immune system and fight infections and kind of like foreign things. And so these antibodies essentially start to attack some of the sperm. So even if you do have a vasectomy reversal, if you've built up too many of these antibodies, some men do find that contributes to some difficulties with their fertility.
Oh, God. Well, I've got a couple of big issues to confront with my doctor regarding the old Vassy D. Let's smoothly transition into cuckold and cuckoldressy. I'm not sure if these are the exact correct terms, but I know what the incorrect term is these days. Can't say cuck. Can't say cuck with gusto anymore, Cam Fraser.
Well, yeah, I think cuck's become a bit of a slur, particularly for a certain subgroup of guys who like to bully people on the internet, I suppose. Wow. And cuckoldry is the term that is used to describe the fetish or the sexual preference or the thing that turns you on. And it's essentially kind of getting aroused from watching your partner have sex with somebody else.
Yeah. So if a guy got off on that, he would be the cuckold. And if a girl got off on watching her partner get off with someone else, then she is the cuckoldress. What's the psychology behind that? Because when I first think of that, and I'm sure a lot of people think of that, it's just jealousy straight away. It's like, oi, heads off my partner. I saw him first. Why are you touching him? There's some interesting psychology behind this fetish.
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons why we might be interested in this, and it's actually quite a common desire or fantasy that people have. We don't really talk about it too much because you're right, there's a bit of this like stigma around, well, isn't that wrong, or isn't there some jealousy that comes up? But some of the things that might lead us to want to experiment or explore this is this idea of compersion. And compersion is this experience or this phenomenon of deriving pleasure from our partner's pleasure. So if we see our partner really enjoying themselves, we get pleasure from them really enjoying themselves, regardless of whether it's with us or not. So there's this feeling of like, oh, I'm interested in my partner having a good time. And so seeing them having a good time makes me kind of have a good time. That's one reason. Then there's the taboo elements, like just exploring taboos in general can be quite an arousing thing to do. Sometimes there's like an element of exploring your sexual orientation, right? So if you're this kind of third party, if you're the cuckold and you're watching your wife and some other guy, there can be an element of exploring that kind of gender, that sexual fluidity, I suppose. There's something else with regards to like power dynamics as well. Oftentimes, especially for like heterosexual couples, there's an element of maybe BDSM in there, some power play, and you might like the humiliation or the submission, right? That can be found in other BDSM activities as well. There's this thing called the candulism fetish, which is kind of a little bit more related to hot wifing. There's this idea of like getting this ego boost or getting this kind of feeling of like, oh, this guy wants to have sex with my wife or my partner because she's so hot, and getting that kind of boost from that. Some guys want to explore it or experience it because they've just seen it on porn and it's just this fantasy that they have. And then others might be because of competition as well. We kind of derive a little bit of arousal from sexual competition, and there's some evidence to suggest that that's kind of playing into this psychology behind it as well.
Well, wasn't that naughty?
Thank you for providing 7 different bullet points of different styles of cuckoldronism. I was going to say that actually, that I think the 4th point you made with the humiliation aspect, because I think a lot of the cuckold porn, pretty much all the cuckold porn, is usually when the original, say, husband of the wife, who's found a new sexual partner that she deems very exciting, there's a bit of humiliation on the guy. He's like sat in the corner and she'll be like, see, you could never do this to me, could you? Look how beautiful his body is. So I just assumed that was part of the cuck stuff, but that's probably more just a porn narrative that's been forced upon, yeah?
Well, that's definitely what is prevalent in porn, you're right. And oftentimes, this is something that's important to mention as well, is a lot of those are racialized. There's a lot of the interracial elements in those things where it's usually a white guy who sees his white wife or white partner have sex with a black man. And so that comes into fetishizing black bodies and a whole bunch of other problematic things within the porn industry. But you're right, there is this like submissive and sometimes even masochistic role that's taken on by the cuck, the person who's watching their partner have sex. And interestingly, that's actually more prevalent and more common in heterosexual couples. In gay and bisexual men and their relationships, that BDSM element doesn't really come into play as much, even though gay and bisexual men do tend to have more cuckoldry fantasies than heterosexual men, and heterosexual men have more fantasies with regards to this than heterosexual women. Yeah,
right. Fascinating. And if you're wondering the other side of the fence to this, to be the person that gets involved in a cuckold situation, that's a bull, I believe. Is that a bull? That's where the bull comes in?
That is the bull. Yes. So yeah, you've got. But look,
I'm a bull. I'm more of a bull.
the bull oftentimes gets objectified, right? They kind of get seen as this kind of impersonal sex toy type thing, which can be fun for some people. They might be into that. But if you're interested in exploring cuckoldry, one of the things is to not dehumanize this the bull, the person, that third person who's coming in, but to see them as like a real person and to bring them into the whole experience. And this can be there's a lot of the jealousy aspect. There's a lot of stigma and shame and taboo around this particular type of sexual fantasy. So you might just want to stay a fantasy for you. You might just want to explore it in your mind. But if you are wanting to, I guess, like have a conversation with your partner about it, just set aside a time to have a conversation with them about fantasies in general. And then if this is a particular fantasy that you're interested in, it can be helpful to explain what it is about cuckoldry that's intriguing for you, right? So I gave that 7 dot points there.
Yeah.
Refer back to that 7 dot points and explain to your partner what it is that turns you on about it.
Yes, absolutely. I'd almost wait for Sex Saturdays, where this chat will be released in podcast form on the Listener app, and almost just play this chat to your partner. Pay special attention to bullet point 3 from Cam Fraser. This particularly speaks to my needs. Whether you're a cuckoldress, a cuckold, a bull, #bulls are humans too. Treat the bulls with respect. Always good to chat sex with men's sex coach Cam Fraser, the Cam Fraser, on Instagram and cam-fraser.com.
Thanks, man.
Sex Saturdays.